This is going to be our final notes video for the year, with covering the rest of Bush and then Obama. Should hopefully kind of go sort of quickly here to kind of wrap things up. All I'm going to do for this video is basically give you what you need for the test, for the AP test, the EOC test, and my test on Friday. There's a few things we're going to leave out for time's sake. We'll kind of cover those if we get some time later on, but we're just going to cover what we need to cover for this week, and then we'll be done. Okay. So I'm going to kind of wrap up with the financial crisis with Bush and then go into Obama. So anyway, I'm just going to read from the beginning because I'm not sure where 6 hours is going to have stopped. So just kind of, if you need to stop the video and catch up, that's fine. I'm going to read the whole paragraph just in case. The housing boom of 2002 to 2007 was fueled by risky subprime mortgages and speculators who borrowed to flip properties for quick profit. Wall Street firms packaged these high-risk loans into a variety of complex investments and sold them to investors around the world. Investments worth trillions, with a T, of dollars lost value as loan foreclosures climbed, the real estate bubble burst, and housing prices collapsed. Many banks and financial institutions at home and overseas faced failure as investors panicked. This resulted in a credit crisis because banks couldn't or were too afraid to make loans necessary for day-to-day functioning of banks. Americans also got hit with soaring gas prices around $4, stock market decline, and rising unemployment that hit about 10%. In 2008, the federal government also issued about $170 billion in a stimulus package, and it took over institutions like Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, these financial institutions. Then when we saw the large banks begin to collapse like Lehman Brothers, a Democratic Congress under Bush decided to do this big, massive bailout program called TARP, Troubled Assets Relief Program, to bail these companies out. About $700 billion was spent on the TARP program to help purchase these failing mortgages. Both sides, Republicans and Democrats, criticized the bailouts, but essentially you had two options. Let the market do its thing, let these companies fail, but then you also lose all these jobs in the process, or you bail out the companies, keep them in running, and keep these people working, because if these people keep working, it means they keep their jobs and they can still afford to buy things in the economy. Or else you would have had a much worse recession. So it's not really a great option either way, but it was the best solution at the time to kind of keep us afloat, or else the economy would have been a whole lot worse as a result. And so it wasn't to reward CEOs necessarily for doing bad practices, but to try to keep the economy from getting a lot worse. Suspected causes of this whole crisis include low interest rates from the Federal Reserve, and a political atmosphere of low regulation that had started under Reagan, and you saw Bill Clinton even in the 90s take off a lot of financial regulations in the late 90s, which led to some of these issues here in the housing market in the late 2000s. Some people in the media refer to this as the Great Recession. I don't like to refer to that. I don't feel like this is anywhere as severe as it was back in the Great Depression, but it is a major financial crisis that Bush leaves on. So between the two unpopular wars, Hurricane Katrina's aftermath, and the financial crisis, Bush does leave office a fairly unpopular president in 2008, which is going to make it hard for Republicans to win a presidency here in 2008 as well. So for Obama, I'm going to kind of skip around and only hit the things I'll really need to talk about in terms of his career. First, we'll look at the election. The favorite to win that election for the Democrats was Hillary Clinton, but she lost to a surprising newcomer, Senator Barack Obama from Illinois, who was the first African American to win a major party nomination for president, and then later become the first African American president in U.S. history. He led a very masterful campaign. He was a gifted speaker and very charismatic. Republicans picked Senator John McCain from Arizona, who was a Vietnam veteran, who did a lot of targeting of undecided voters. Obama's message of change and his grassroots, well-funded campaign helped him win in 2002. A lot of Republicans were hurt by the views of Bush, and Democrats got stronger, and they had both chambers of Congress, and they won the presidency as well. What also really helped Obama is that he was able to bring out a lot of voters who don't typically vote. He brought out a lot of minorities like Hispanics as well as African Americans. He also energized a lot of younger voters too. A lot of younger voters typically don't vote, and this is one of the first elections really affected by the social media, where you see things like Facebook and Twitter and so on really get the voters to show up and come out and vote. And so social media's impact was felt in this election especially, and helped bring in a lot of the younger voters in 2008. And so he brought this coalition together, all these different groups that helped push him over and help him win in this election in 2008, and then later in 2012 as well. In the lame duck period of Bush did extend bailout money at Obama's request to help some other companies that were failing, like automakers like GM and Chrysler, to help keep those guys from collapsing as well too. So Bush and Obama did work well together in those couple months in transition, because it was a major crisis economically, and so they were willing to do some things, especially since he had a Democratic Congress as well too, willing to pass a lot of these policies. All right, executive orders. Obama began the process of closing the prison at Guantanamo Bay, because he ran on a campaign of doing this, but it never actually happened in his 8 years. So he tried to close the prison, which was one of his major talking points against the Bush administration, but it never actually happened. In fact, as of right now, the prison at that base is still open right now. He formally banned torture in the wars. He expanded stem cell research, meaning like more genetic research into stem cells, like from fetuses and embryos. And he also ended restrictions on federal funding of overseas health organizations that provided abortions, which means that, basically we're going to provide more money for clinics and facilities that provide abortions, both domestically and internationally. All right, one big thing to be aware of is one of his immediate actions was economically based with the stimulus package. In 2009, Obama created a $787 billion with a B stimulus package. The goal was to provide relief to businesses and people. The hope was it would increase production, consumer spending, and employment. It would make it go like whenever this happened, basically every taxpayer got some kind of stimulus package deal here. My wife and I got a few $100 off of this. The whole idea was to go spend it to help the economy get better. But when you have a crisis like this, most Americans will typically just pocket it and save it in case something happens. And so it didn't really have the desired effects that they wanted it to have. It didn't really get the economy back on its feet. It made some immediate relief, but it failed to make long-term growth and make the economy better down the road. Businesses were also too afraid to make hires under Obama, because he talked about getting rid of the Bush tax cuts whenever he ran in 2008. So businesses were also less likely to hire in this period because of fears of, well, if I hire these people, I'm going to pay more money because the tax cuts are going away soon. And so the stimulus package did add a lot of money to the national debt as a result, which increased under Obama. Obama also expanded more TARP funds and bailouts to help buy bad mortgages and restore banking confidence. So Bush and Obama both did bailouts or this TARP money to help keep a lot of these businesses afloat during this time period. Next, we have the health care reform passed in 2012. So Obama wanted to make universal health care and a government option and kind of pick up where Bill Clinton had failed back in 1993. Supporters believe that a health care reform would cover all citizens and help basically bring up all these Americans who didn't have health care insurance have health care insurance now as a result. But he couldn't do that. He couldn't get a health care bill passed exactly how he wanted to. It was much more complicated to make this overreaching package. So they had to make a compromise deal, which resulted in the Affordable Care Act in 2010, or more commonly known as Obamacare as well. It requires U.S. citizens to have health coverage, or they have to pay an annual penalty tax. So it does not create government-mandated health insurance, or the government does not give you health care insurance. What it does require is that you have to have health care insurance, or else every year when you pay taxes, you have to pay a penalty tax as a result. It also requires that large businesses offer a health care plan to employees, or else they pay a penalty. It also creates a states-based exchange program through which small businesses and individuals can buy coverage, and allows you to get coverage regardless of previous conditions. Like, if you already have cancer, you can buy health care, which that was a big issue a long time ago, is that you couldn't get health care if you had pre-existing conditions, or especially if you were someone who was elderly, it was hard to buy health care as well too. So a lot of promises were made that you could keep your doctor, the cost of health care would not go up and so on, but a lot of those things didn't happen. Yes, you have about 19, 20 million more Americans get health care in the past 6 years or so. But at the same time, subsidies have gone up because people who are healthier or more wealthy have to cover the costs of the lower income folks. Taxes have increased for people to help pay for these costs. And states began to opt out of some of these programs, which was unforeseen, which means that some of the costs, that also drives up the cost of health care too. Which is one of the reasons why Republicans and the Trump administration is trying to figure out a way to deal with this. Because while Obamacare has good ideas, it didn't do all the things that it was promised in terms of not raising taxes. People were not able to keep their same plans and not able to keep their same doctors. Subsidies have gone up. If you paid like I paid healthcare before this and after, and our costs have gone up as a result of Obamacare. So they're trying to make it a way to where it's a lot cheaper, more efficient, so it's not so harsh on people's money and so on. But regardless, you do have a major healthcare reform passed here in 2010, which did not happen under Clinton back in '93, and they're still trying to figure out and fight Obamacare to this day and try to figure out what to do with it. It also, though, directly led to the Republicans getting control of the House in 2010. So many people were upset with the stimulus package and the healthcare reform, thinking it was two big government programs. And so in 2010, Republicans took control of the House of Representatives by a large portion of seats and held the House for the rest of Obama's career. And so it hurt Obama for his last 6 years trying to get anything accomplished. All right, for the rest of this, I'm not worried about the protests, Tea Party, Occupy Wall Street, do that later. The BP oil rig disaster, that was one of our largest man-made environmental disasters in American history whenever the BP oil rig exploded off the Gulf of Mexico in 2010, off our coastline. In 2011, for military issues, Obama ends Don't Ask, Don't Tell. So if you're homosexual, you can serve the military now openly. And even if you're transgender now, you can serve the military openly. In 2011, we also finally tracked down Osama bin Laden in Pakistan. He was killed there by SEAL Team 6. Fulfilling the Bush promise, we do withdraw troops out of Iraq in 2011, although that does lead to more instability and ISIS forming there in the years since then. And then in 2012, that year's wrong. In 2012, you had the famous Benghazi attack that was used against Clinton in this past election. Because there was a lot of different revolts happening in Libya that year, you have basically this terrorist attack that happens on this U.S. embassy where an American ambassador named Chris Stevens gets killed and a few other Americans do too. So the whole hubbub about this is that those guys had requested additional military protection a few days before this, and it was denied by the State Department under Clinton. And then at first, the State Department and the Obama administration said this was not a coordinated terrorist attack, but when the weeks later we find out it was a pre-planned terrorist attack. And so just kind of a big scandal. And like I said, it was in 2010, not 2011, right before Obama gets reelected. And even in spite of the scandal, he does go on to get reelected. But it does hurt Clinton because that's used against her in 2016 whenever she runs against Trump. But it does make us look bad and not as prepared for that terrorist attack on that embassy as a result. There was no direct connection to Al-Qaeda, but some other terrorist groups that had formed in Libya in that area. So I don't have something on here. One thing I want to add is that you have this other event called Arab Spring, A-R-A-B, Spring, in 2011. It would basically go under here, military issues. I just neglected to put it on here. But Arab Spring is this massive multi-country Middle Eastern revolt that takes place in 2011. Multiple countries engaged in these revolts. Basically, all these countries wanted to get rid of some type of authoritarian government and wanted to instill democracy instead. The countries included Tunisia. It started with Tunisia. Also Egypt, Libya, which resulted in the Benghazi attack a year later. Syria, Yemen, Bahrain, Jordan, Saudi Arabia, all these guys had some form of protest against their governments. The only successful country in creating a democratic government was Tunisia. But these protests go on for about a year and a half, from 2011 to 2012, and most of them are eventually suppressed by their governments. But we still haven't really seen all the lasting effects of this yet. All right, so that's pretty much where we're going to stop. I mean, the election of 2012, Obama wins. He beats Mitt Romney. The last thing you need to be aware of for the EOC is this federal debt. Since the war started under Bush, the federal debt's dramatically increased. Under Obama, the federal debt has doubled. It's gone from $10 trillion to about $19 trillion in his 8 years. So the federal debt has gone up mostly because of these bailout programs, stimulus packages, and the wars that developed under Bush, which is still climbing right now. We're doing a lot of deficit spending. It's come down some, but we're still doing it currently. So there's one other slide we're going to cover when we get back at some point. These are some just random issues we're going to address. But for the test on Friday and for the EOC, you're pretty much good to go. So that's where we're going to stop. Good luck on your test tomorrow, and I'll see you when I get back.